Test. Oh yeah, looks like I'm good. Okay. I'm Phil Wyman, and this is the Wild Theology Podcast, where the world, the humans in it, and God are all wilder than we've been told.
That's your intro.
So, you'll get philosophy and theology and crazy stories that come from 30 years of pastoring,
Boring.
20 years of festival work,
Whatever.
and the mud and blood of wrestling with the living in the spaces angels fear to tread.
Ooh, trying to sound interesting, are we?
Oh.
Yeah, you think you got something to say?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the problem, dimwit.
Look, I'm a lot smarter than you think.
Yeah, you tightened your shoes this morning.
Whatever. We're Phil Wyman, and this is Wild Theology, where you get to argue with your own ideas.
And lose.
That's the point. If you would like to support this podcast, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Phil Wyman. This is Wild Theology, podcast number 33, and I'm doing this from Salem, Massachusetts. I'm now on the other side of the country from my last podcast with Jim Hogue, which was done in Ramona, California. And here I'm continuing with the ongoing topic of love big or go home. And this is Love Big or Go Home Part 9. And I am talking about here hospitality and the heart of God. I gave a little warning in the last part of this podcast on Love Big or Go Home that I'd be talking about hospitality. So here we go. I was sitting in a camp chair in Quartzsite, Arizona, set up a canopy to sit beneath, and Priscilla the Winnebago was behind me. Two majestic saguaro cacti stood behind the canopy. I picked the location because of the cacti, and because there was a sign nearby saying music camp. Turned out there really weren't any musicians at music camp, but the few of us who were there started getting together around a campfire in the evening, and soon we had gatherings as large as 40 people each evening. This was the rubber tramp rendezvous, and each year thousands of people who live on the road in vans and campers get together to trade stories and learn the tricks of boondocking and traveling as cheaply as possible. There was a group of 6 of us who had formed the nucleus for our little camping area, and it became an extended family. Brian is a retired New York City fireman. He occasionally told stories about the Twin Towers on 9/11 when he felt comfortable enough to do so. Brian was clearing out his Ford van and getting rid of extra things. Everyone around Brian became a recipient of his generosity. Lonnie was the de facto leader of the little group. He traveled down into town to pick up firewood and ice for our extended family, and Susie Sunshine gathered a potluck meal together. One night, we all pitched in and invited other musicians to come join us for a meal. These are just a few examples of how people who were strangers only a week before began sharing and caring for one another. Hospitality appears to occur naturally on the road. This traveler's hospitality is not formed around class or societal affiliation. Middle-class retired people are generous with full-time nomads living out of their vans. Hippies, redneck warriors, and retired people with generous pensions and large nest eggs all get along. They share and eat with one another out there. When the road is home, hospitality lives on the street. It's a little more public and a little quicker to action. There's little property to defend, but there are also fewer relationships one can regard as well tested and true. But despite this unfamiliarity, people move toward trust much quicker than in most of the sedentary and stable neighborhoods I've lived in throughout my life. Friends form quickly, and in the 11-day-long gathering of rubber tramps, neighborhoods formed quickly among these strangers, and the neighborhoods had their own unique characteristics. These things are a model of what Christian hospitality once was. General William Booth, the founder of the Salvation Army, noted that, quote, "One of the secrets of the success of the Salvation Army is that the friendless of the world find friends in it," unquote. This is not just the strength of the Salvation Army, but was once the strength and the mark of all true Christianity. It is our love that sets us apart from the world. When we do not live in that love, it is our hypocrisy that marks us and sets us apart, and the world generally calls us out on our hypocrisy. In recent American politics and social action, we're finding that evangelical Christianity is focusing on circling the wagons. We're becoming protective of the things we've acquired and the culture that we've developed over the last couple hundred years. Perhaps we should be asking ourselves if this culture and these things are worth defending. Could it be that we're defending the wrong characteristics of evangelicalism and that there are more fundamental traits we should be rediscovering? My time with the rubber tramps caused me to wonder which values my Christianity should value most. Hospitality has risen on my list of important traits because I am watching extended families form under the powerful adhesive of generosity. In fact, some of us wanted to keep this community together for just a little longer and ended up traveling together to the next locations. In the antique period of early Christianity, hospitality was a foundational character trait of the church. It was critical to the growth of the church, but perhaps more than that, it was almost dangerous. Julian the Apostate, the Roman emperor who attempted to pull the empire back to the pagan deities of Rome after the reign of his father Constantine, declared that the hospitality of the Christians, was what made them nearly invincible. He called the Roman pagans and the empire itself to model that hospitality, which he saw in the Christians, and to care for the poor of the empire. Now, if we fast forward a couple thousand years, and we're faced with different societal dynamics. In the last couple centuries, nations have risen to take on the challenges of poverty and sickness. It is not the churches of the late antique period and Middle Ages that are the primary institutions running the hospitals and caring for the hungry anymore. These things are now paid for by the state with all its power and riches. It's good that the state cares for its own people. This movement toward concerns of the oppressed and impoverished is a welcome change from oppressive governments gaining plunder or exacting taxation through war. Now the state and institutions it supports have become professionals in the business of caring for people in need. Problematically, it is far more difficult to professionalize hospitality in its classic sense, but that's what we've tried to do. Today we have an entire hospitality industry. Hotels and restaurants offer the hospitality that was once found in the medieval home with the inn and pub. We're not dependent upon the hospitality of strangers when we travel. We book a room and find a meal in a familiar restaurant. Taco Bell and Applebee's will imitate the exact meal we can find back home and thereby remove any strangeness or foreignness from our experience. We get something just like we can get at home, but we will likely be missing the one thing home has to offer: friendship at a deeper level. And this is what Christian hospitality demanded in the early days of the church. We were not called simply to meet a need and serve a meal. Our amateur status did not demand perfection, but rather concern and friendly care. We did it not because we were paid, but because we truly cared. Though there are millions of medical and hospitality professionals who truly care and have learned to become, quote, friends with their customers, the fact is that this friendship remains at a distance, and it's required to remain at a distance by the professional position. And this is seen most clearly in the work of the psychologist or the politician. Cases of impropriety with patients or young political workers make the headlines of newspapers. In the United States, concern for health care revolves around being able to supply good health care for our own citizens. This is understandably important to the life of a nation, but differs so desperately from the care medieval Christian service offered. The science and effects of the care may be better, but the concern for who we take care of has been refocused. Once we may have had inadequate services, but we tried to help anyone and everyone we could. Today we've become adept professionals, but we typically are focused on taking care of ourselves. What might happen if the church formed hospitality around caring for the outsider in the same manner that a family member or a friend cares for us? Over the years of outreach in Salem, Massachusetts during our 31 days of Halloween, we have found a variety of fun and simple ways to express hospitality to the mass of visitors coming to our city each weekend. Our outdoor stage provided free live music. We often have free hot cocoa booth, and in its heyday we served upwards of 10,000 cups of free hot cocoa to people on the streets. Pappy Fisher and his gang from North Carolina have taken over the Hug Line outreach and form a gauntlet of people offering free hugs each weekend of the month. Each of these things is a minor expression of hospitality and is only a small example of the many things that happen each October. People are forming friends with the locals who are in need of family and friends. They have meals together. They continue to communicate with each other throughout the year. They share their deepest secrets and open up about their fears with one another. All the deepest expressions of hospitality are occurring because we've decided to make ourselves hosts to the people who visit Salem. This is the power of hospitality. Hospitality is inherently evangelistic. No matter what belief system or lack of belief system uses hospitality, it still has evangelistic drawing power. Many a cult leader has grown his flock by creating a sense of family through being generous and hospitable to those who are in need of a friend. If Julian the Apostate can see that this is one of the great powers of the church, what hinders us from seeing this and practicing it as we should? Of course, by asking this question, I'm opening up another can of worms. Will we use hospitality simply as a tool for growth and influence, or will we become hospitable because that's the nature of our faith, that we are called to love others just as Christ loves us?
Thank you to my patrons who help make these missional travels and these podcasts possible. Without you, I couldn't do it. God bless you. If you'd like to support this project, you can do so here on Patreon for as little as $1 a release. And at the most, that's $4 a month.
Why on earth would anybody want to support us?
Well, I think we're pretty cool, and maybe some people believe in what we're doing.
Oh, come on, you believe that?
Yeah.
Don't you ever think you're just a little too weird for the average person?
Yeah, sometimes.